Welcome back to the Morning Show here on the Rise News. I'm Rufai Sini.
I'm Adesu Almoran.
And I'm Shaito Antigari.
Alrighty, President Muhammadu Buhari laid the 2020 appropriation bill before the joint session of the National Assembly with an expected aggregate expenditure of 10.33 trillion naira. The president, who began his budget presentation by urging his audience to pardon his voice as he had a cold, which he attributed to hard work, was full of confidence and vigor.
That's right. It will be recalled that it was not so when he presented the 2019 budget before the federal parliament in 2018. The clash between members of the ruling All Progressives Congress and the opposition People's Democratic Party had marred President Buhari's presentation of the 2019 appropriation bill.
Indeed. Well, joining us to dissect the 2020 budget's presentation by President Muhammadu Buhari is Ayo Adedeji, a management consultant, financial analyst, fellow of ICANN and CITN. But before we get started, let's take a look at this report by Rise News Senate correspondent Abel Ejikeme.
It's been tagged the budget of sustaining growth and job creation. The 2020 federal budget proposal has pegged aggregate expenditure at 10.33 trillion naira, with 2.14 trillion naira earmarked for capital expenditure. And close to the amount budgeted for capital expenditure is debt service. It's been estimated at 2.45 trillion naira. The federal government adopted an oil price benchmark of $57 per barrel, a daily oil production estimate of 2.18 million barrels per day, and an exchange rate of 305 naira per US dollar for 2020. With a very poor revenue generation in 2019, President Buhari says the sum of 8.155 trillion naira is estimated as the total federal government revenue in 2020, a 7% increase over the 7.594 trillion naira of 2019. To this end, Buhari has proposed a draft finance bill which seeks an increase of the value-added tax rate from 5% to 7.5%. He says the 2020 appropriation bill is based on the new VAT rate.
Accompanying the 2020 budget proposal is a finance bill for your kind consideration and passage into law. This finance bill has 5 strategic objectives in terms of achieving incremental but necessary changes to our fiscal laws. These objectives are: A, promoting fiscal equity by mitigating instances of regressive taxation. B.
Well, there you have it, the presentation of the 2020 budget by President Muhammadu Buhari. Ayo Adedeji, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Adiswa.
Yeah, for some people, the only commendation that has come for this budget is the fact that it was presented early. In fact, it's the earliest in the life of this administration. And the fact that we might, the operational award might, be reverting to the January-December budget cycle. What's your initial response to this budget so far?
Okay, thank you so much for having me. I think it's actually correct what you stated, that the major initial reaction from the public and also from the Senate, given by what we saw yesterday on the floor, is the fact that we applaud the fact that the budget has been presented early so that the January to December budget cycle that we normally yearn for will become a reality. My initial reactions on the indices, my attention is grossly drawn to the revenue angle, and that drags quite a lot of questions. It drags quite a lot of questions. I'm also so touched by the cycle of debt servicing that we have to go through, in the fact that if we bake the cake of federal government budget every year and we separate it into 4 parts, debt servicing comes every year and takes 25% and walks away. And we would need to address that. And very grossly, what I'll be talking about and dwelling on this morning is the issue of revenue. It seems as if, as a country, I'm sorry to say, we're not thinking.
Let me contextualize that for you. The budget of Nigeria in about the time Shehu Shagari was president was about 25 billion. And the budget now is about 35 billion. So in the space of over 30 years, we've not had a major change in the budget. I mean, I'm talking about US dollars. And when you look at it today, revenue drive has been a big problem. You saw the IMF reports. The IMF said we're overexcited about our projections. So our projections might fall short. I mean, What would you say about that?
That is just the truth. I agree absolutely with the fact that we are actually very much overexcited about our projection. Rufai, you're aware that for the 2019 budget in itself, given by the figures that we have up till date, the revenue that we wanted to realize, we have only realized 2 trillion in terms of revenue. And it is based on that you're making projections and talking about what will happen in 2020, that you're looking at a revenue of about 8.1 trillion from federal government. The basis cannot hold. The truth about what IMF said is very, very correct. I would want to see a country where we're thinking about the size of our revenue because we have oil.
Where will that money come from? Where will that money come from?
Very, very simple.
Where? Where will it come from?
I have sat down and have thought about this. I've reviewed budget a lot of years. And the truth is that some of the years when you review the budget for Nigeria, the only thing you don't want to do is you don't want to cry. Because the budget is supposed to be a vision by the leaders to talk about the tomorrow, to talk about the setting of what should be, to talk about the engagement for the future, to talk about this.
Where will that money come from? Where will that money come from?
Simple question.
Yeah.
Other countries make money.
How?
We can ask simple questions. How do they make money?
How?
So I give you an example. Yeah. Abu Dhabi and United Arab Emirates says that when we want to make our money, we're thinking about tourism and we're talking about innovation and technology. When you look at a country like the South Koreans that do not have any natural resource, they talk about their human capital development. The more of Samsung that they have, the more of big corporation that they have, the more of taxes that they get. In Nigeria, we think about lazy options. Lazy option is increasing VAT. Lazy option is doing quite a lot of things. So you drive this and say, where can we make money from? We talk about diversifying this particular economy. We talk about solid mineral and agriculture. Lip service. So people say the size of our budget is very small. You compare the size of our budget to the budgets on something like Brazil. Brazil budget is like 35 times the size of our budget. We're not thinking. We need to grow this economy. We need to think about revenue. So much emphasis on expenditure. We need to think about revenue. Think beyond oil. Think about what will bring this money. How are we developing our people? How are we creating...
In the short term.
In the short term.
You're talking long term. It took South Korea over 20 years to do semiconductors. We're talking short term. How can they make that? How can they make that over 8.1 trillion if they've not been able to make 7.9 trillion in the last year? How can they make them short term? Short term solutions.
Basically, what you're talking short term, and I agree with you. But what we have to put in place are the things that will give us real gain. You're talking about a presidency that's like 4 or 5 years right now. If you have set certain things straight 6 years ago, 7 years ago, 5 years ago, we'll be reaping the reward right now. If we have not done all of those things up till now, I'm appealing. Can we start right now to talk about revenue generation and thinking outside the box? The Senate were also so concerned. I listened to them yesterday, and they were just so concerned. They were talking about revenue. They were pushing it so aggressively that they also now want to be involved in something that has to do with economic policy for the country. In the short term, we can look at our options. Agriculture and export is there for us. When we talk about agriculture, we need to talk about the value chain. So many people, from federal government to state government, I've listened to them over the years, talk about agriculture, but they're not talking about processing. They're not talking about, see what we have. One of the major things that is not okay with us is the fact that things that we're supposed to process, we don't process. This is 2019, and we still cannot beat our chests that we have a single refinery that is working. We cannot process anything that has to do with agriculture.
Looking at the health and education sector, put together is about 100 million. Now, if we're looking at... Billion. So 100 billion rather. Billion. If we're looking at comparing that to the population that we have in Nigeria, and that's about 500 naira to a person. That doesn't make any sense. Why do we still have little numbers going towards the health and education sector?
It's shocking. It's really, really shocking. But let me correct something when you talk about education. I know you're talking about the 48 billion. But please note that there is also the UBEC fund, which is about 112. So added together for education, what is being projected is 160 billion. But the truth is that this is still not adequate in any way, a provision.
And also some capital expenditure will also feature them.
Yeah.
So it's not that simplistic.
Yeah, so it gives credence to a federal government that might not be thinking deeply about this particular sector. One of the things, what are the things that takes money away from us in Nigeria? These two major areas, education and health.
Very quickly before we go, because we're running out of time, let's look at some of the key assumptions this budget is predicated on. $57 per barrel, 2.18 million barrels per day production, 7.5% VAT, and GDP growth of 2.93%. Is this conservative or unrealistic?
Unrealistic. Unrealistic, and I don't want to be aggressive with that. Unrealistic because of quite a number of things. So you want to ask the question, your budget for 2019 in terms of barrel, on what did you base it? You base it on 2.3 million. Your budget for 2020, what are you basing it on? You're basing it on 2.1, 2.3. So the simple question is, this is 2019. What are you doing currently?
And the exchange rate, 305 to a dollar?
Yeah, sure. It's unrealistic. You're doing 1.8 and 1.9 currently. You projected for 2019 based on 2.3 million barrel per day. You're projecting another year on 2.something million. It's unrealistic.
I'd like to thank you so much. We need to segue to a quick break, but in case you forgot, NMDC just said pipeline vandalism is on the increase too.